Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. The rebellion over new COVID rules. Boris Johnson faces what could be his biggest revolt from Conservative MPs.
The call goes out for volunteers to help at vaccination centres after 500,000 boosters were booked in England yesterday.
More than 2 years after Harry Dunn was killed in a road accident, an American woman is due to face criminal proceedings in the UK.
The reality of being the victim of online abuse as MPs call on big tech companies to take tougher action.
I was utterly shocked because I just felt like, where did that come from? It just made me feel disgusted.
Plenty of jobs. Where are the people to fill them? Good morning. 10 weeks after furlough stopped, unemployment remains steady, but there are record numbers of vacancies. What's going on? We get the latest numbers at 7 o'clock.
In sport, Manchester United's game tonight is off because of a COVID outbreak. They won't play Brentford, with a record number of cases now reported across the Premier League.
And it's a wet and windy day for those of you in northern Scotland today. Elsewhere, most places dry, but don't expect a huge amount of sunshine. I'll have your forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning. It is Tuesday the 14th of December. Boris Johnson could face the biggest backbench revolt since he entered Downing Street later on, when MPs vote on new COVID rules for England.
As many as 70 Conservative MPs have indicated they'll oppose the government's Plan B measures for tackling the Omicron variant. Here's more from our political correspondent Ben Wright.
It is, says the government, a race between the virus and the vaccine. And people have been rushing to receive their booster jab after ministers warned of a tidal wave of infection caused by the Omicron variant of COVID. That has meant delays for some people trying to access appointments and a fresh government call for vaccine volunteers.
No variant of COVID-19 has spread this fast.
In the Commons yesterday, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid said Omicron now represented 20% of cases in England and was accelerating fast. The booster programme has been expanded, with anyone over 18 able to book a jab from Wednesday. That means NHS resources are being switched to focus on delivering vaccines and urgent clinical care. The health service in England has been put on its highest level of emergency readiness, Level 4 National Incident, meaning it can be coordinated at a national level. A letter from NHS bosses says even with the protection of booster jabs, the threat from Omicron remains serious and the number of people requiring care could be significant. While vaccines are the first line of defence, the governments of all UK nations agree further measures are needed to try and slow the spread of Omicron. In the Commons today, there will be a series of votes beefing up public health protections in England. There will be one on more mandatory mask wearing, another on replacing self-isolation with daily testing for people exposed to a positive case of the Omicron variant. But it's the plan to require a negative COVID test or proof of vaccination status to attend crowded events that has riled many Tory MPs.
There's a question of how effective they actually are, and evidence from other countries suggests that they're not very effective, but also I have a problem with the government requiring people to do that.
Up to 70 Conservatives may rebel against the government, arguing that these restrictions go too far. These votes will be judged as a test of Boris Johnson's authority over his party too, a beleaguered Prime Minister who may well need Labour MPs to get his policy through. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
We're joined now by our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. Morning, Adam. Great to see you this morning. It's a really big day for the Prime Minister, isn't it? And it looks like he's obviously going to have to depend on Labour to get his plans through. How difficult is that for him?
Morning. Well, the real focus today is going to be on this measure for introducing COVID certificates for certain venues in England, and the government is kind of bending over backwards to make it look less of a big thing than it might have been. So there are a lot of exemptions for various venues. For example, churches won't have to use it. You will be able to show a negative test rather than showing your COVID vaccine status if you're worried about that. And also, if venues aren't able to do it, they'll be able to offer spot checks instead of checking literally everyone arriving if they all arrive at the same time. But nevertheless, there are lots of reasons why Conservative MPs just do not like this, and that adds up to lots of MPs being prepared to vote against it. Whether it's people who just think it won't work, whether it's people who just don't like the idea of people having to show something to get access to a service, whether it's people who are actually just pretty annoyed at Boris Johnson and the government over various things that have happened in the last few months and just want to use this as an opportunity to sound off. Now, the important thing about parliamentary rebellions is, are they one-offs and there's a bit of a row and then everyone moves on as kind of friends again, or does it lead to something much more kind of permanent and structural that just makes it much harder for the government to govern from here on in? I wonder in this case, it might be a bit of the latter, and that could prove to be very important if the scientists recommend that we need further measures to control the spread of the Omicron variant, and the government is not able to introduce them because MPs on its own side will not support it. So that is something to watch in the next few weeks. And of course, that all depends on what happens with the virus out in the real world.
We will keep on watching. Adam, thank you very much.
Scottish ministers are to discuss whether to introduce further COVID restrictions. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says action is needed to be taken to slow the spread of the Omicron variant while the booster vaccination programme is accelerated.
Wales First Minister has announced urgent plans to offer the booster vaccine to all eligible adults by the end of the year. Mark Drakeford also warned new restrictions could be on the way, saying ministers may need to take more steps to keep Wales safe. There are currently 30 confirmed cases of Omicron in the country.
The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has insisted the UK has plenty of lateral flow tests available. That's despite the government website having to temporarily close yesterday because of high demand. From today, fully vaccinated people in England who come into contact with a COVID case can take daily tests instead of self-isolating.
Lawyers for Ansa Koulas, the American woman accused of causing the death of the motorcyclist Harry Dunn, have denied an agreement has been reached for her to face criminal proceedings in a UK court.
Last night, the Crown Prosecution Service said the case would be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. Mrs Sakoulas is accused of killing the 19-year-old in a crash outside an RAF base in Northamptonshire back in 2019. Here's Dan Johnson.
Harry Dunn was knocked off his motorbike outside this RAF base in Northamptonshire in August of 2019. Ansa Koulas, wife of a US intelligence official who was stationed there, fled the country under diplomatic immunity. She was charged with causing death by dangerous driving after a campaign, but an extradition request was refused by the US. Now the Crown Prosecution Service has told Harry's parents the case will go to court next month.
As you can imagine, they're completely overwhelmed at the moment. Lots of tears. But importantly, you know, of course, we continue to think about Harry. This is no celebration. This is no victory, but clearly the culmination of 2.5 years now of very tough, high-profile public campaigning for justice.
The Foreign Secretary's welcomed the news, but it's not clear whether the original charge is still being pursued or how diplomatic immunity is being bypassed. And Ansa Koulas' lawyers say, although they'd always been willing to discuss a hearing via video link, there's no agreement at this time. This complicated case has taken many turns and faced difficult challenges, but there will be a hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court on January the 18th. Dan Johnson, BBC News.
MPs say big tech companies should be forced to take tougher action against a wide range of online crimes and abuse. A parliamentary committee reviewing the proposed online safety bill says the industry has failed in its plan to self-regulate. The government says the new legislation will hold companies to account if they fail to act.
We'll have in the future clear codes that say to the companies, this is what the offence means, this is what you have to do. If you fail to do it, we will audit you and you'll be liable for the mistakes that you've made. We don't have any of this at the moment, so this will be a big change. But I think that's the key thing. I think people in particular who've been the victims of abuse, who felt they've had no one to turn to and that the companies weren't interested in helping them, they will now have the law on their side.
More than 88 people are now known to have been killed by the tornadoes that swept through 6 US states at the weekend, and at least 100 people or more are still missing.
74 of the deaths were in Kentucky, where search and rescue efforts have been continuing. Our North America correspondent Nomi Iqbal has the details.
People would normally be back in work, but instead it's the third day of rebuilding their lives. The town's doctor would be seeing patients. Instead, he's trying to save his surgery.
We're trying to clean out a path to it to get a truck in here to maybe get some equipment out of it that could be salvaged.
The scale of destruction is staggering. Entire homes have been wiped out. Residents here are used to tornadoes. They get bad weather alerts, but nothing prepared them for this.
We went down to my grandmother-in-law's and stayed in their hallway for shelter. I just held my kids tightly and prayed.
A rescue operation is ongoing at the nearby candle factory after 2 people were found alive in this debris by their mobile phone signals more than a day after the collapse. President Biden plans to visit Kentucky this Wednesday.
This administration has made it clear to every governor, whatever they need, when they need it. When they need it, make it known to me, and we'll get it to them as rapidly as we can.
He's offered support to help residents recover and rebuild. Many tell us that could take years. Nomi Iqbal, BBC News, Kentucky.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.